The step aunt who went too far. I come from a stereotypical, close-knit, super nice Canadian family. We have some raging, uppity Quebecois in our ranks, but other than thinking they rule the world and that they speak real French while French people speak a trash dialect, they're part of our family too, and we love them. I'm 29 now, but the first part of this story took place around 15 years ago, when I was still a kid. I have two brothers, one younger by 2 years, Kevin, and one older by 3 years, Paul, and I'm my family's only daughter. My mom was and is a homemaker, and my dad is now a retired accountant, but before that he spent a decade in the Canadian Army. Our family's closest relatives were my uncle Gary and his wife Bernice, who lived in the next province over on the border and visited our family multiple times per year with their sons Howie and Frank, who were around the same age as me and my brothers. So we kids were all good friends growing up. Being the only girl, I got to do all kinds of stereotypically male games like football, fast-pitch baseball, hockey, building tree houses, and things of that nature. We had other extended family to come over for Christmas and Easter, but Uncle Gary and Aunt Bernice were close enough to us that they'd come over just because Gary had a good day at work and wanted to make a celebration dinner out of it. Gary was an artisan who built furniture from scratch and sold it from his own store, first at his physical store, but then later online too. His biggest triumph was when a hotshot attorney commissioned him to furnish his entire suite of 5 offices across Montreal. Before that, he was a soldier like my dad in the Canadian Army, which meant he'd shoot you but say please first. So these fun times continue from the time I was a baby up until I was around 13, when Aunt Bernice developed inoperable breast cancer and passed away at only 46. It hit Gary very hard, and of course was a nightmare for his sons too, who lost their mom right around when they started high school. Gary had a couple of depressed years, even though he tried to put up a brave front. Eventually, he met a woman online from Manhattan, NYC, who I'll call Linda. Linda was only 27 when Uncle Gary started dating her, or rather started a long-distance online relationship with her. This was back when chat rooms were a big thing. Linda was an ex-model and aspiring actress, both on stage and on screen. She had actually been in bit parts in various commercials and minor, non-speaking roles in some Broadway shows, but no breakout parts. With the passage of time, I can reflect and see that she really couldn't support her lifestyle based on the work she did. It's clear she manipulated men into paying her way through life. She was strikingly beautiful though, so she had that going for her. My parents thought Linda was far different from Bernice and they didn't like her at first. But since Gary seemed happy, they were happy for him and went along with it, and didn't try to dissuade him from dating her. Howie and Frank told me and my brothers that they didn't really like her, especially as she was acting too familiar way too soon in calling them her boys, as if she was already replacing their mom. But as long as their dad was getting over his depression, they were happy for him. After less than 6 months, Linda moved to Gary's house and was playing house with him and his sons, taking on the role of mom. Gary would bring her to all family functions, and she looked really flashy and glamorous compared to the rest of us. She definitely screamed New York. Not literally, but yeah. According to my cousins, she did cook and clean and play a positive role, at least at first. Then they finally married. Most of our relatives weren't thrilled with the marriage, but again, as long as Gary was happy, then we were all happy for him. Especially since it had been 2 years since his wife passed away. I was about 15 at this time. Howie and Frank would always text me or chat with me online about how Linda changed almost overnight once she married their dad. While she had been helpful around the house before, once she was officially married to my uncle, she became extremely domineering and ordered my cousins to do way more chores than they were used to. They had always done things like cut the grass, take out the garbage, sweep up the patio, but Linda demanded they do absolutely all the chores now. So instead of everyone doing something so that the entire household was nice and clean, Linda would relax all day, while Howie and Frank vacuumed and mopped and did laundry after school. The only thing my cousins didn't have to do for Linda was cook for her, but that was because she ordered delivery almost every day. My cousins did admit she had good taste, in that she didn't order pizza or other relatively inexpensive delivery food, but instead, full-on gourmet meals. Uncle Gary, of course, footed the bill for all of these extravagances. When they didn't order in, Linda enjoyed dressing up and going out to dinner even more. I think it helped Gary's self-esteem to be seen out and about with such an attractive woman. But now that I'm well into adulthood, when I see pictures of them all from that era, Linda looks like a call girl. I'll hit fast forward and get to the point. Linda was obviously a fortune hunter, and although Gary wasn't a rich man, he was quite well off, very trusting, lived away from huge cities his whole life, lonely and generous. All of these things made him a perfect victim for someone like Linda. Did I mention the insurance policies? Of course she wheedled Gary into taking out large policies on his life. Of course, to allay any suspicion, she also had a hefty insurance policy on herself with Gary as the beneficiary. Through her feminine wiles, according to my cousins, Linda convinced their father to name her as at least 80% beneficiary to all his assets in the event of his death. Assets which amounted to well over $1 million for just her portion. Linda enjoyed traveling, and the fact that her stepsons weren't 18 and had to go to school, and the fact that her husband had a store to run, didn't stop her from indulging in her passion for long journeys, or her passion for chasing other men. She'd always deny it, but Gary was a stupid guy, if that makes any sense. He was a fool in some ways, but he was smart in others. He was a fool for Linda. Linda had male friends all over New York, and even in town where my cousins lived. My cousins said that they inadvertently walked by the living room where she had their back to them and was using her laptop and chatting with guys much younger than Gary. Other theater people. Other times when they were out with their friends, they'd occasionally see her with another man, and it looked like they were on a date. This, while her husband was dutifully at work, running his shop. My cousins were nearing adulthood by this time, but they didn't want to get involved in their dad's personal relationship with his wife, so they never told him about it, even if they told me. It didn't matter. Like I said, Uncle Gary wasn't all the way dumb, and he figured it out on his own, and if he couldn't, he had hired a private investigator. I was still a kid at the time, and so no one shared all the tawdry details, but since that time, I've pieced it together from multiple accounts that Linda basically had boyfriends all over New York, Los Angeles, Montreal, and she'd often use Gary's money to fly out to see them, or even worse, spend Gary's money to fly them out to Canada. We all thought that Gary was using the private investigator to gather evidence for a glorious divorce against Linda that would teach her a lesson, but sadly, that was not to be. Ever since Bernice died, Gary had never really recovered, and now that Linda had clearly betrayed him, he spiraled really quickly into deep depression. It's even worse because he maintained this stoic, happy vibe around his sons. Then one day out of nowhere, he just blows his brains out with his old army automatic. Everyone is devastated, especially Linda, but not for the reasons that everyone else is. She's distraught because her husband's insurance doesn't pay her diddly squat in the event of a suicide. Her consolation prize is that after all is said and done, she not only has Gary's 5-bedroom house, which is paid off, but also the vast majority of his retirement, $401k equivalent, and close to all of his savings. Howie and Frank did get a few $1,000s each, but it would in no way see them through college, or even set them up to be independent in town with an apartment for any length of time. Howie was over 18 now and attending the local college to become a software developer, but his heart wasn't in it. His dad had been helping him pay for it, but he also worked part-time as a waiter in town. Frank was in his last year of high school. Linda did not offer to help Howie continue to pay for his college, and he couldn't afford it on his own, so he dropped out and worked full-time at a retail store. Neither he nor Frank wanted to live with Linda, so my own parents took them both in. It was a tight fit. I was lucky being the only girl because I still got to have a bedroom all to myself. Howie had to share a room with my brother Kevin, and my brother Paul stayed with Frank. Paul Frank, like the clothing and accessory brand LOL. My own parents weren't especially well off, so it was clear all of us, sons, daughter, and cousins, would have to work at least part-time through college. My dad's accounting job paid well, but he was the only full-time worker in our household of now 7 with a serious salary, so all of us got jobs as teenagers and young adults to pitch in. I went to cosmetology school and became a professional hairstylist. Eventually, at age 23, I met my husband, Logan, same age, at a photo shoot we were both working at. He's a professional photographer. We have a 3-year-old daughter, Natalie. All 4 of the boys are married now. My brother Paul became an accountant like my dad, and he and his wife have 2 daughters. My brother Kevin became a high school science teacher, and he has a daughter. The girls in our family are finally catching up. My cousins Howie and Frank both have wives and 2 kids each, though both of them have a son and a daughter. Howie played minor league professional hockey for several seasons and became a professional furniture maker like his dad used to be. His brother Frank is his business partner. It seems like Linda became a distant part of the past, but I never forgot her. It's a shame my cousins didn't get to continue with their dad's business, because almost before Gary's body was cold, Linda sold off the business and liquidated everything, yielding many thousands of dollars free and clear, but erasing what should have been a family business to last many generations. She also sold Gary's house and yielded many more thousands of dollars. So all of these fire sales, in combination with Gary's retirement and savings money, meant that Linda was a millionaire. She moved away, I assumed, into the ether, never to be seen again. Yeah, I never forgot her, but my husband Logan reminded me. In showing him old family photos, Logan told me that Linda looked really familiar. She's younger here, but I took headshots for her not more than a year ago. Fascinated, I waited while Logan flipped through his digital camera archives and zeroed in on one of his clients. Sure enough, it was Linda, using what I know to be her maiden last name. A bit older, yes, but still flashy, and I must admit she's still breathtaking. Credit where credit is due. Though I must say she does look like she had at least a little bit of Botox done on her forehead. Digging around a bit more, and with both Logan and I using our connections in the theater, photography, and fashion industry, such as they are in our part of Canada, we come to discover that Linda is living in New York these days, and is still an aspiring actress. My brothers and cousins are all married and living their lives, but when I call them up and tell them I've found Linda, all are down for a little fun at her expense. We hatch a plan, nothing too serious. We just want to take Linda down a peg. All of us buy a couple of burner phones at random places, wearing dark glasses and hoodies, paying cash. We've all watched The Wire. We know how it goes. So I think of most of my clients and realize most are women, and the men I know aren't straight. I ask my husband, "Baby, who do you know that's a guy and drop dead hot? I mean, other than you?" Once I convince him I only have eyes for him, he suggests a Russian-Canadian friend of his, a professional model and actor who spends most of his time in Russia and only a few months of the year in North America. 6'4", 200 pounds of Slavic muscle. Ooh, yummy. Calm down, OP, I tell myself. I'm married, LOL. Seriously though, all kidding aside, Sergey is 23 and looks like he came straight out of a male underwear photo shoot. We explain to him what we need from him, and once my cousins tell him what Linda had done to the family, he was totally down to play along, especially when we offered to pay him a couple $1,000s for his help. The $2,000 came about something like this. "Daddy, can I have $2,000? Dad says. "What for? Are you and Logan in trouble? Business slow?" "No, it's just that I've tracked down Linda, you know, Gary's wife, and I am going to make her look like an idiot and need a little money to make it work." "Oh, well, I'll just spend less on us all at Christmas. Here's a check for $3,000. Don't tell your mother. Let me tell her. I need this. Keep me in the loop." So by calling on people who live in New York and are in the theater scene, we find out where Linda lives and who she talks to for her theater union or whatever they have. By asking around on the phone, we discover that Linda still dates online. We read up her dating profile, and it's totally nauseating. She talks about how she's an actress, as if she's been in a lot of things, and she has all these photos regarding her travels, so we know she has a passport. At our instruction, Sergey creates a dating profile just to contact Linda. He of course has to fill it with his photos as bait. Because he looks the way he does, right away his profile gets slammed by lots of messages from women, and even men. But he starts messaging Linda. We all know that women get way more attention than guys on these things, and despite Linda being 50-something and older than average for online dating, she's still amazingly beautiful. Whether she'd even see Sergey's profile over what must be dozens or even hundred of other messages from guys looking for a rich cougar was a gamble. But after a couple of days, it pays off, and Linda messages him back. Sergey clearly knows what to do, and immediately charms Linda with his accent and his looks, and the whole international muscle guy aura he's got going for him. He is, of course, using a burner. He tells her he's an international businessman who goes to Canada, the USA, all over Asia and Europe, mainly selling textiles. The fortunate bonus that he speaks Russian, French, English, and even conversational Vietnamese. I know, right? It shocked me. Help establish his bona fides. Linda spins a web of bullcrap about how she's a former ballet dancer, and that's why she's still so slender and fit at her age. I think it's more due to lipo and anorexia, but wherever, I can be salty, especially after how she did Howie and Frank dirty. He implies that he has a second career working international security for high-profile people too, and has different work phones assigned to him by his employers. It gives him this air of mystery and danger, which I guess is interesting to a basic betch like Linda. Sergey basically gets Linda to really like him during the course of their online exchanges. He even gets her to send him nudes. Sergey in turn forwards these spicy pics to everyone else's burner phone. Ladies and gentlemen, you haven't lived until you've gotten crotch pics and bathroom mirror duck lips from a bleached blonde, 50-year-old divorcee. Long story less long, Sergey admits that he's falling for Linda, despite having never even seen her in person. And wouldn't it be wonderful if they could meet? Sergey tells her he's in Russia now. This whole time, Linda is wary that someone as young and handsome as Sergey must be looking to steal her money. Sergey heads off that suspicion by having a friend of his in Dubai send her a bottle of expensive liquor, with a signed card pretending it's with his compliments. The friend made sure to send him a copy of his signature, so he could replicate it himself and have others replicate it if necessary. From Russia, another generous good sport who is actually a friend of Logan's, not Sergey's, who works in a wholesale store, sends a bottle of perfume to Linda, again signed by Sergey. Sergey actually even offers to buy Linda's ticket to meet him in Moscow. A bluff, of course. To get to the hotel he's staying at, one need only take an 11-hour plane flight, and then take a car, bus, or train another hour or so out to a lovely little village where he will K her brains out, and they can travel Eastern Europe like Cyrillic Romeo and geriatric Juliet. Convinced by now, Linda scoffs at the idea of Sergey paying her way. She insists on buying a first-class ticket to Moscow with her own money. Okay, but once you arrive, I'll pay for everything else. I wasn't there, but I'm assuming that by this time Linda's panties are so wet that they've evaporated into mist. The big day comes, and Linda flies out for her Russian rendezvous. Sergey had a friend of his who manages a hotel in the outer Moscow suburbs help him out, which was why Sergey needed to use the particular hotel chosen. The fact that it was far out of the way, and rarely even half-filled, certainly helped. Only Sergey speaks Russian in our conspiracy group in Canada, but he assures us he's followed our directions to a T. The friend, who speaks no English, copies a photograph of a message. Then we wait. The friend in Russia eventually texts Sergey's burner that Linda is at his hotel, looking quite lovely, he might add. She asks him where her room is. Where is Sergey? The man speaks no English, but through translation apps, her meaning becomes clear. Ah. Of course. The man uses his own phone to compose a message that is then translated into English. I don't know, Sergey, but you have a room and it's right this way. His hotel has a closed circuit tape that he later showed us all. Linda walks to a third-floor room and is given a key. The whole floor is deserted, as it isn't a popular hotel, even if it's beautiful, being as it's in a quiet neighborhood and is far from the city. Linda texts many messages to Sergey this whole period, who stopped answering once Linda got 10 minutes out of the airport. After Linda had been in the hotel a few minutes, a bellhop approaches and gives her an ice bucket with a bottle of champagne, along with an envelope. I don't know if Linda drank the champagne or what she did after she closed the door. She definitely stayed the night, according to management. She left quickly the next day without saying anything. It must have been something in the note that upset her so much. What's so upsetting about champagne and a card? I'd think anyone would be glad to get a chilled bottle of Crystal. And if it comes with a mysterious note that says, "Hope you have a wonderful trip, love, Gary," who cares? While all this was happening, all of us with burner phones were texting Linda's naked selfies to all the contact numbers we still had from when we were part of her life, to her friends, parents, professional contacts, people from plays she's been in. It had been 9 years, but we're Canadian, and we don't update. Then all the phones were smashed with hammers and thrown away without any replying. But before we did that, I sent the photos to a mutual friend of mine and Logan's in New York, who with the help of her friends, printed 100 copies at the local box and ship. And smooth as can be. Left a few here, a few there, a couple dozen scattered all around various theater venues. In old phone booths, on subway seats, in windows, you get the idea. all with Linda's first and maiden name as caption, and her phone number. Sergey deleted his dating profile and all his pictures. He made sure never to be in real FaceTime with her. He knows how to ghost and how to deny. He's now doing his little panty dropper stud walk in Kyiv for the next several months. The past many years, we'd all moved to different houses and apartments since Linda stole my uncle's life and drove him to death and robbed his children of their father and their inheritance. So if anyone ever asks us if we know something about this, we'll play dumb. Linda's had time enough to make all sorts of enemies. Could have been anyone, really. My parents still live in the same house. Other than my mom making sure my dad deleted Linda's boob and beaver pics, they're playing dumb too. There's always MILF porn, Linda. Besides, you're still rich off your dead husband's money, so why so sad? Keep on aspiring there, eh?